Hello everyone. Hi. So welcome to the second session of CUET PG Crash Course. And again, today we have a new member with us who has joined this live. So guys, please welcome Pragatika Pradhan. Would you like to say hello?
Hello everyone, myself Pragatika Pradhan. Currently, I'm pursuing my master's degree in Department of English, Delhi University. I have been a student in the last CUET course, so technically I'm in part of Team Vallath. So it's like a really what I could say. I would like to say something about the course. The time, like the previously we had this course, and it was really a very helpful and a very crisp course I can really talk about, because definitely we are not that well groomed in our undergraduation. This course really welcomes us to get out of our comfort zone and cover various areas. It's not only about British or Indian literature, but definitely certain areas that are not even taught in our universities. So I hope everyone finds this course really helpful, and wishing all the aspirants for the who are going to pursue their masters their luck. Like, they're gonna ace the exams.
Thank you so much and welcome to this session, Pragatika. It gives me, so much happiness to see you guys again coming back to Vallath and doing these sessions. And it's so good to see you guys, pursuing your masters in your desired universities across India. So welcome to this session and welcome everyone to this second session of CUET PG Crash Course. So shall we start the session now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So I will share my screen. Right. So here we are, CUET PG Crash Course Day 2. So if you haven't watched our previous session of CUET PG Crash Course yet, please do. We are trying to really focus on the question paper pattern of the CUET PG exam, and also we are strongly focusing on the various aspects of the syllabus. So please stay tuned. Right. So with that, let's begin with our first question. Pragatika, will you please
Yes, ma'am.
read the question?
Sure, ma'am. Okay, so the first question goes like, who called Spenser the poet's poet? So the options are William Hazlitt, Charles Lamb, Thomas D. Quincy, Elsie Knights.
Right. So here we have a question that who called Spenser poet's poet? So it is Charles Lamb who called Spenser the poet's poet. So as we all know, Spenser was a contemporary of Shakespeare and he was an excellent poet. He was noted for his literary excellence, and most of his and some of his major works are Fairy Queen, right? Amority, Epithalamion, Prothalamion. So he was an excellent poet and a contemporary of Shakespeare. He was noted for his metrical innovations and his style of writing. And uh, Charles Lamb or the Romantics were very influenced by his style and the innovations he made and the contributions he made towards literature. So Charles Lamb called Spenser the poet's poet. It alludes to the excellence he held and the contributions, the significant contributions Spenser made towards English literature. Right. So let's move on to the next question. Yes.
So the next question is, The Deserted Village is a poem by Dash, published in 1770. The options are Thomas Gray, Oliver Goldsmith, Robert Burns, and John Dennis.
Right. So here we have a poem before us. The name of the poem is Deserted Village. This poem was published in, sorry, oh God, I think I pressed something. Okay. Yes. So this poem was published by Oliver Goldsmith, right? So Oliver Goldsmith was a transitional poet. Now the transitional poets came before the Romantics. And the transitional poets had this tendency of romanticism. They started writing in the style of the Romantics because by the end of the 18th century, the people were already bored with the monotony of the neoclassical style and the decorum and order, precision. So by the end of the 18th century, there was a romantic revival. And then we came across these transitional poets during this time of romantic revival. And Oliver Goldsmith was one of these transitional poets who made significant contributions to this period of romantic revival. And The Deserted Village is one of his most important poems, where he talks about this village of Auburn and how this village is evicted. And all the people are going from the village to the city in search of work. And he is somehow scared that if this continues, a time will come when there will be no more villages. There will be no more this continuation of rural lifestyle. So the deserted village. It's a poem by Goldsmith, published in 1770, and it's a work of social commentary, and it condemns rural depopulation and the pursuit of excessive wealth. This poem has been written in heroic couplets, and it describes the decline of a village called Auburn and the emigration of many of its residents to America. So please remember, here he talks about the village of Auburn and how people are emigrating from this village to the cities in search of work, to make more wealth, to live a better lifestyle. And he condemns this, right? Okay. Next question.
The next question is, who among the following was the biographer of Charles Dickens? The first option is Thomas Carlyle. The second one is Wilkie Collins. The third option is John Foster. And the fourth option is Anthony Trollope.
Right. So this trend of writing biographies of famous writers is not something new. Across the decades, we have seen that many biographies have been written of many important personalities. And obviously, here we see that the question is about the biographer of Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was one of the prominent novelists of the Victorian period. He was born in the year of 1812, and he became one of the leading novelists of the era. And here the answer is John Foster. John Foster wrote the life of Charles Dickens, and in this era, we see many biographies coming, like Elizabeth Gaskell wrote the biography of Charlotte Bronte. Then Lytton Strachey was a very important biographer of the Victorian period. So please do look up who wrote the biography of which writer or poet. Like James Boswell wrote the biography of Samuel Johnson. So knowing the biographers and the biographies they wrote is very important. And here John Foster wrote the biography or the life of Charles Dickens, one of the major novelists of the Victorian era. Right. Next question. Pragatika, you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so the next question is, the term dash was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989 in the paper Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, subtitled as A Black Feminist Critique of Anti-Discrimination Doctrine, Feminist Theory, and Anti-Racist Politics. The options are intersectionality, queer, third gender, and transsexuality.
Great. So here we are in search of a term. The term which was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And this term was coined in her paper, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, a Black feminist critique of anti-discrimination doctrine, feminist theory, and anti-racist politics. So here we are talking about the term intersectionality. The term intersectionality is talking about the intersection of various factors coming together, like race, gender, ethnicity, class, status. So all intersectionality refers to the coming together of all these factors and how these factors affect people's lives. And this term was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw. Right, next.
Dash is the soul of tragedy according to Aristotle. The first option is plot, the second option is character, the third option is thought, and the fourth option is diction.
Right. So here again, we are back to this great philosopher of classical Greece, that is Aristotle. And Aristotle is very well known for his work on tragedy. In his major work, Poetics, he talked extensively about tragedy. And there he talks about 6 constituent elements of tragedy: plot, character, thought, diction, song, spectacle. And he goes on to say that plot is the soul of the tragedy. And plot, character, thought, diction, song, spectacle, these are the 6 constituent elements of any tragedy, and plot is the soul of the tragedy, right? And he talks about all this in his major work, Poetics. Next question.
Who among the following talked about the mirror stage? The first option is Ernest Jones. The second option is Carl Jung. The third option is Lacan. The fourth option is none.
Right. So here we are facing a question of psychoanalytic theory. And the question is, who talked about the mirror stage? So mirror stage refers to a particular stage in our phases of development. It is one of the phases of our development, mirror stage. And it was Lacan who talked about this mirror stage, where a baby, when he or she looks into the mirror, he or she realizes that it is me. It is the phase when that baby or the child starts to identify himself or herself as something different from the environment. That's the mirror stage. And it was Lacan who talked about it. Right.
The next question is the well wrought urn Studies in the Structure of Poetry is a 1947 collection of essays by Dash. The options are the first option goes as R.P. Warren, the second option is Alan Tate, the third option is Clent Brooks, and the fourth option is J.C. Ransom.
Right. So here we have a critical work, The Well-Wrought Urn, Studies in the Structure of Poetry. So the title is itself quite self-explanatory. It tells us that it's a critical work on poetry. It's a 1947 collection of essays by Clent Brooks. So, The Well-Wrought Urn, Studies in the Structure of Poetry. It's a collection of essays by Clent Brooks, and it is considered a seminal text in the new critical school of literary criticism. It belongs to the school of new criticism, the school of thought or the school which believes in close reading of any text, regardless of the biography of the author or the socio-political cultural conditions in which a text was produced. New criticism only believes in the close reading of the text. So the well-wrought urn belongs to that school of thought, that is new criticism. And this title, the well-wrought urn, this title has been borrowed by Clent Brooks from John Donne's poem, The Canonization. John Donne's poem, The Canonization. Right. Next. Pragatika, you're on mute.
Oh, I keep on forgetting. Sorry, ma'am. Who among the following is associated with myth criticism? The options are I.A. Richards. The second option goes as C.K. Ogden. The third option is Francis Ferguson. And the fourth option is Jean-Francois Lyotard.
Right. So here we have another school of criticism, that is myth criticism. And here we have a number of critiques and theorists. I.A. Richards, obviously not. C.K. Ogden, no. Jean-Francois Lyotard obviously belonged to postmodernism. It is Francis Ferguson who was a myth critique. And there are other myth critiques like Maud Bodkin, Northrop Frye. So please do look up how many schools of criticism are there, how many schools of theory are there, which theorists or critics belong to those schools. These questions have come many times. So please do look up these writers and theorists and the schools of thought they belong to. Right? Okay. Next.
The term negative capability was coined by Dash. The options are Shelley, Byron, Sade, Keats.
So the term negative capability, it's a very important term in romantic criticism. And this term was famously coined by Keats. And according to Keats, this term negative capability refers to the capacity of an artist to stay in doubts and confusion and dilemmas. It refers to the capacity where a particular artist or writer is not trying to solve every confusion, and he has the capacity to stay in confusion, to stay in doubts. And according to Keats, Shakespeare was the prime example of negative capability. According to Keats, Shakespeare had this wonderful capacity of staying in doubts. He never tried to solve everything. Okay, so negative capability is the capacity of artists to pursue ideals of beauty, perfection, and sublimity, even when it leads them into intellectual confusion and uncertainty, as opposed to a preference for philosophical certainty over artistic beauty. So, negative capability refers to a potential to pursue beauty, to pursue, intellectual pleasure, even if it leads you into uncertainties, anxieties, or confusions, right? Okay. Next.
So the next question is, Byron dedicated his play Dash to Goethe. The options are Manfred, Sardana Palace, Don Juan, The Prisoner of Chillon.
Right. So here, Byron, we know he's one of the most prominent late Romantic poets. He's one of the most prominent late Romantic poets, along with Shelley and Keats, and he had dedicated his tragedy, Sardana Palace, to Goethe. Right. So Sardana Palace, it's a historical tragedy in blank verse by Lord Byron, set in ancient Nineveh and recounting the fall of the Assyrian monarchy and its supposed last king. And this work was dedicated to Goethe. Right. Next.
Who among the following is associated with the idea of governmentality? The options are Louis Althusser. The second option is Raymond Williams. The third one is Foucault. And the fourth option is Stuart Hall.
Right. So here we have another theoretical concept, that is governmentality. So governmentality actually refers to the various strategies which governments employ to control the lives or the bodies of the people they govern. Right? And Michel Foucault was the one who talked about this concept of governmentality. There is the political strategies employed by governing bodies to control the lives or the bodies of the subjects. Right. Next.
Which post-colonial theorist talked about hybridity? The options are Edward Said, Franz Fanon, Paul Gilroy, and Homi Bhabha.
Right. So here we have a concept, theoretical concept from post-colonialism. We know that India being a post-colonial nation, I think we understand this situation of hybridity very well, where nothing is completely homogeneous. Everything is existing in a very hybrid situation. And it was Homi Bhabha who famously talked about this hybridity, right? Where nothing is homogeneous, right? Okay, next.
Hawk Roosting is a poem by Dash. The options are Ted Hughes, Philip Larkin, Seamus Heaney, Dylan Thomas.
Right, so here we have a very famous poem, Hawk Roosting. And if you know about the style of Ted Hughes, you will know that it's a poem by him, because Ted Hughes was very famous for writing poems with animal imagery. The thought fox, hawk roosting. He always used to write about, employing these images of animals. So hawk roosting is a very famous poem by Ted Hughes. And these poets of the 20th century, they're very important, like Philip Larkin, Dylan Thomas, Ted Hughes, Elizabeth Jennings. So please do look up their important works. They're very important. The movement poets who are there, right? Okay. Next.
The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats was first published in Dash. The options are The Germ, The Dial, The Westminster Review, Little Review.
So now here there's a very interesting question to look at. And these types of questions have come in various exams many times, like which work got published in which magazine or periodical first. So we have all read this poem many times, The Second Coming by W.B. Yeats, which talks about the coming of the Antichrist, right? It talks about the coming of the Antichrist. And this poem was first published in the Dial magazine. We know the Germ. The Germ was the periodical of the pre-Raphaelites. The Westminster Review was famously the journal or the magazine where George Eliot was the assistant editor. So please do look up various journals across the periods and which poem or which novel got published in which periodical or journal first. Like, for example, Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. It was serialized in Bentley's Miscellany. So you should know which work, especially the important works like Oliver Twist or The Second Coming, which work got published first in which magazine or journal, who founded that journal or magazine, in which year was it founded, right? So please do look up these things before your exam. These things will be very important, right? Yes.
So the next question is, A Woman Killed with Kindness is a domestic tragedy of the Jacobian era by Dash. The options are Thomas Middleton, Thomas Dekker, Thomas Heywood, George Chapman.
Right. So Jacobian era or the Jacobian period, it refers to the time from 1603 to 1625. Jacobian era refers to the time frame of 1603 to 1625. It was the time when King James the First of England was ruling, right? And he ruled till 1625, and just after since he sat on the throne just after the Queen Elizabeth I, there was a dramatic shift in literary styles because Elizabethan literature was something really else, as we see in the hands of Ben Jonson or Shakespeare. But after she passed away, King James I came to the throne, and the Jacobean era started. And there was a dramatic shift in the paradigms of literature. And the genres which were very famous during this time were revenge tragedy, city comedy, tragicomedy. So there was this tendency of very violent plays, dark plays, a dark tone, death, right? So A Woman Killed with Kindness, it's a domestic tragedy of the Jacobean era by Thomas Heywood, right? So I would request all of you to please look up all the important plays of the Jacobean era. So A Woman Killed with Kindness, it's an early 17th century stage play. It's a domestic tragedy by Thomas Heywood, right? And so what is this play about? Here we see that Anne and Frankfurt are celebrating their wedding and they're living happily together. But what happens in between is she becomes unfaithful to her husband, and her husband realizes that, and he starts ignoring her, but then she just starts wasting away in regret. But finally her husband accepts her again, and things uh, get back to a normalized situation, but she finally dies. So that's the domestic tragedy, A Woman Killed with Kindness. Her husband turned out to be quite kind towards her, but she finally died. Okay.
So the next question is, Areopagitica by Milton was published in the year Dash. The options are 1640, 1643, 1644, and none.
So in the 1643, there came censorship, right? And in response to that, John Milton wrote Areopagitica, where he requested or he made a very strong plea for the freedom of the press. Because in 1643, there was this license, there's this law of censorship, of pre publication censorship, and Milton was against it. And so in Areopagitica, he makes a strong plea for the freedom of the press. And this work was published in 1644. So that censorship rule or law came in 1643, and just in the next year, Areopagitica came out. Right. Yes. Next.
In which book of Paradise Lost God appears in Adam's
Okay. In which book of Paradise Lost God appears in Adam's dream and explains why he was created and put everything in Eden within his care? Is it book 2, 4, 6, or 8? So, as we know, Paradise Lost, it's a literary epic by John Milton. It is one of the greatest works of literature ever. It was first published with 10 books in 1667, and it is in book 8 where God appears in Adam's dream and explains why he was created and put everything in Eden within his care. So, guys, when you are preparing for an exam like CUET PG, please make sure your basics are very thorough. You should be very thorough with the basics. You should know these classical works like Paradise Lost, right? Iliad. You should know these works very well. So please do look up these works of Milton, Dante, Homer, Dickens. They are must for any exam, right? So please do look up Paradise Lost. Right, next.
The Adventures of Peregrine Pickle is a novel by Dash. The options are Samuel Richardson, Tobias Smollett, Lawrence Sterne, and Henry Fielding.
Very good. So here we have a novel of 18th century. And these 18th century novels typically have this word adventures in them. The Adventures of Peregrine Pickle. That, that style of picaresque novels where we come across the adventures of the rogue hero, right? And it is famously a novel by Tobias Smollett. Tobias Smollett was one of the four wheels of the English novel of this time. So please do look up all the writers like Richardson, Smollett, Sterne, Fielding. In the last session of CUET PG also we have talked about these writers. They're extremely important. Like starting from Daniel Defoe onwards, Jonathan Swift, then these writers, these four wheels of the English novel, they're very important. Their works are really important for any exam you sit for. So please do look up their works. All right. Next.
She Stoops to Conquer by Oliver Goldsmith is a dash. The options are novel, poem, comedy, and essay.
Right. So here we have another work by Oliver Goldsmith. That is, She Stoops to Conquer. And we all know it's a comedy, right? So She Stoops to Conquer, it's a comedy by Goldsmith. It was first published in 1773, right? Okay. And this play is subtitled She Stoops to Conquer or The Mistakes of a Knight. She Stoops to Conquer or The Mistakes of a Knight. And here we have the Hardcastle's daughter Kate, right? And here there's she. She is Kate, and she's stooping to conquer whom? She's stooping to conquer her beloved Marlowe. Kate is stooping to conquer Marlowe. That's why she stoops to conquer. Right. Okay. Next.
The History of a Young Lady's Entry into the Vault is the subtitle of Dash. The options are Clarissa, the female Quixote, Evelina, and Cecilia.
Okay. So as many of you might recognize by this picture, this is Fanny Burney. This is Fanny Burney. And here we have a subtitle of one of her novels, The History of a Young Lady's Entry into the World. And it is the subtitle of Evelina. Evelina is again a comedy of, it's a novel of manners. Evelina is a novel of manners by Fanny Burney. Evelina, or the history of a young lady's entry into the world. It's a very important novel by her. Her other novels are Cecilia. Cecilia by Fanny Burney is a novel from where Jane Austen borrowed the title of her novel Pride and Prejudice. So please do look up all these writers and their works. Subtitles are very important. Like here we see Evelina, or the history of a young lady's entry into the world. So be very thorough with whatever you are studying. Writers, works, subtitles, publication years, important characters, right? And the periods. Which period came after which one, right? Know the characteristics of this period, why this particular period is important, why certain themes are very important in certain periods, like the theme of passion and nature and feelings important in the romantic period. Again, criticism of the society becomes very important during the Victorian period. So why these periods are important, the important writers, the issues they're talking about, please study thoroughly, and please don't worry. We will be back again tomorrow with more questions. So Pragatika, did you like the session?
Yes, ma'am, it was really an interesting session. I hope everyone would like the session because it was really informative, starting from British history to all the criticism theory part. Like we covered as much as questions we can. So yeah, hoping for the best. All the best to the students.
Yes, right. So I really hope you guys loved the session. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video with your friends who will be appearing for this exam. And these questions are helpful for any exam you sit for. So please do like the video and join us again tomorrow. We will be back again tomorrow at 9 with paper 1, right? Tomorrow we have paper 1 session. So stay tuned and keep watching our channel and subscribe our channel if you haven't yet, and see you all again tomorrow. Bye. Take care. Bye, Pragati. Thank you for joining us.